Welcome to the Rebound Rundown. I'm your host, Paul Fritschner. This is your daily digest college basketball show that covers everything you need to know about your favorite team. From game previews to recaps to press conferences and breakdowns, we have you covered. Every Monday through Friday with your morning commute, wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Well, Mike, it's great to see you here on the Rebound Rundown. I appreciate you taking a few minutes this afternoon because after all of your talk about Xavier for the last 3 months, it does kind of seem like fate that it would lead into a meeting here on Friday night up in Milwaukee. Paul Fritschner, Mike LaTulip, if you're listening back in audio form on Friday morning, we're recording this on Thursday afternoon. Make sure if you're watching right now, you go down and hit that subscribe button to the Rebound Rundown. But over the next 15 minutes or so, Mike and I are going to talk about what this matchup looks like on Friday night, break it all down for you. There's nobody better to talk about it than Mike LaTulip, played for Illinois and continues to cover them, film breakdowns and everything. For anybody that wants to go back and listen later, Mike does a ton of film coverage of Illinois if you really want to get in the weeds of everything. So, Mike, there's nobody better to talk about this. And before we get into Illinois, I want to just ask your quick thoughts. We were talking before we came on the air about what Xavier's win looked like to you last night, because for the Musketeers to come back from what they were not doing well in the first half to rally in the second half and win that game 86-80 over Texas, it was a statement win for Xavier, for the Big East over the SEC. A lot of components there for Xavier in that win tonight. I appreciate you joining the show today. What did you think of that win for Xavier last night?
I thought it was pretty emblematic of what we've seen over the last probably month and a half with Xavier. I don't think any team in college basketball has played better with their backs up against the wall than Xavier. What they were able to do down the stretch in Big East play, and then even just last night in that game alone, where the NCAA tournament's all about rhythm, man. And when your rhythm's disrupted with two of your best players, probably your two best players getting into foul trouble with 5 fouls combined in that first half, and then figure out a way to dig deep and get back into it. I thought that's kind of what we've seen all, for the better part of the season here from Xavier. So wasn't surprised by that. I mean, I thought it was a little jarring for them to start, just the athleticism and just the end-to-end speed. I thought Weaver was so disruptive when he got in there for Texas, but just Sean Miller does what Sean Miller does. The guys were great, obviously, but if it gets down late and it's a close game, there aren't many other coaches in the country I trust than Sean Miller.
Yeah, the coaching job in that second half, one, just to set the players up offensively as well as they did. For Ryan Conwell and Dante Maddox to not hit a three combined in the second half, and for Xavier to put up 47 points, I think speaks to what they were able to do as a team offensively, but also the lineup management of dealing with that foul trouble from even Fremantle picking up his second foul about 8 minutes into the game to then go the rest of the way and only have 2 fouls in the last 28 minutes-ish of the game was a phenomenal job, I thought, by the Xavier coaching staff.
It was, and to keep your big out of trouble, you always have to have good ball pressure from your guards. You need to have guys fighting over screens. You need to have guys leveling off dribble penetration. I thought they did such a good job of that in the second half to not put Fremantle in harm's way. So that was awesome to see. And I thought they did a good job managing those things, and they were aggressive. I just thought they were the aggressor for the majority of the second half, and that kind of bared itself out as the half went on and resulted in a big win.
All right, let's talk about Xavier and Illinois. 9:45 on Friday night. It'll be on CBS, and it might be a little later depending on how long that Kentucky game goes, but it'll be on CBS. Kevin Harlan on the call. It's a big-time matchup up there in Milwaukee. Mike, for Xavier fans that are listening to this that haven't watched any Illinois this year, what do the Musketeer fans need to know about this Illinois team before we really get into the weeds of what they look like?
Yeah, they've done things this year that have been kind of mind-boggling in both directions. I think they've made history this year in a number of different ways. They have the largest win on the road against an AP top 10 opponent in college in Division I basketball history. They have, they're one of 4 teams in the last 30 years to have 2 road wins of 20 plus against AP top 25 opponents. It's they have those peaks of really, really elite play. And then they also have, they played against Duke and had the biggest loss in program history. So you can see the variety that we've gotten from this Illinois team because they're young, because they've had some injuries and illness and guys in and out of the lineups. But when they're whole, they're really good. And they're going to be whole for this game. And so I think it's going to be a challenge for Xavier. That doesn't mean that they can't win this game. I mean, we got to see which Illinois team shows up, how effective Kasper Siakashonis is. All that's on the table. But I think it should be a pretty good game, man.
Yeah, I think matchup-wise, you look at not just Siakashonis, but Will Riley, Ivisic in the middle. I mean, you go down the list of matchup problems that this Illinois team can present. And the way I've been describing Illinois this week, it was hard to look ahead past the Texas matchup, but you get ahead of yourself and you start looking at Illinois and at their peak, like you said, this is a 2 seed, but they've also lost to Rutgers, a crushing loss to Duke, and there's really no shame in losing to Duke this year, but it was the way that they lost
in that fashion.
Game.
Yeah,
it was the way that they lost that game that would make Illinois fans want to crawl in a hole. But when you talk about Illinois being at their peak, let's just say 5 minutes into this game, what are some things that you're looking for that you'll know, oh, it's clicking right here, or it's not, they don't have it yet tonight?
It's the on-ball pressure defensively, particularly from Kylan Boswell. I think Boswell's going to get the Ryan Conwell assignment. I think that's going to be a massive, massive storyline to this game, but also the glass. I mean, the Illinois, they're so good on the glass, and if you're going to pursue and send 5 guys like they do at times, I mean, this is funny. It's completely different philosophies for these 2 teams in terms of the offensive glass. Xavier prioritizes transition defense, and Illinois is like, if we send 5, we better go get it. And that's going to be what I'm looking for is really Illinois on the offensive glass. If they can get rebounds back, obviously that's helpful. But if they don't, that's leading to Xavier getting out in transition, and they're top 10 in the country in fast break points. We saw that game kind of break open last night where they had 7 fast break points in the first half and then another 10 in the second half just from being able to get stops and turn defense into offense. So that's what I'm looking for. And then, you got to look too with when Illinois gets they were very ball screen dependent earlier in the season with Siakashonis, and then they went to more of just like a pure 5-out look with Ivisic. And you'll see there's cutters to where if you have 5 out around the perimeter, guy at top of the key, 2 guys on the wing, and then 2 guys in the corners, whenever that ball goes to the top, whichever side it's going to, that guy on the wing cuts through. And they've just found really creative ways to hurt you if you switch, to hurt you if you don't switch. And Will Riley's really been unlocked because of that. So I'd imagine Swain gets the Will Riley assignment. That would be my guess there. So then that, when you look at Fremantle and Ivisic and Conwell and Siakashonis and Boswell, like Trey White is kind of the X factor in all this too. When Trey White plays really well, he tends to kind of tilt the scales for Illinois. So all that stuff, I think, baked in. If they're clicking in those ways, they're a tough team to beat.
From the Xavier perspective, I think last night, one of the things when I was talking to one of the Texas beat writers about Texas earlier this week, he mentioned Texas has gotten off to slow starts this year, and that's really doomed them in some games. And they didn't really get off to a slow start last night. They were pouring shots in from all over the court. Xavier didn't really have an answer offensively or defensively. And really, some of the shots that Texas was hitting, I thought not all of it, but some of it, Xavier was playing okay defense, and they were just hitting crazy shots. From the Xavier offensive perspective, it took them a little bit to get going last night. But it also, to me, Mike, felt like a team that lacked NCAA tournament experience, and you could tell that there were nerves, right? This is one of the best free throw shooting teams in the country. They didn't shoot free throws as well as they normally do last night. The three-point shooting was good, but you didn't get the same three-point shooting from, Ryan Conwell or Dante Maddox in the second half that maybe you would have expected if you just showed somebody the final score and said, here's what happened. So when you look at this from a Xavier perspective, Mike, what do you think they need to do offensively against this Illinois pressure?
Well, the first thing I'm looking for is just what their approach to this game is. I know it's the next game, but that was an emotional win last night. And I think that was a major, major, major high. And then you get on the road, you travel up to Milwaukee. How do you settle back in and kind of refocus? I think Sean Miller will have them right in that regard. But yeah, I mean, look, when I look at Illinois defensively against Xavier's offense, so there's a couple different ways that Illinois plays defense. They'll either go kind of deep drop coverage, meaning, the big that's guarding Fremantle. Once that ball screen's set, they're just retreating into the paint, and they want to force tough twos. They want to stay out of rotation, and then they've had another coverage that's more of what they would call like stabbing. So it's kind of a show. It's not a hard hedge, but it's essentially, hey, I'm just gonna try to like level you out and not have you be able to turn the corner and get downhill. So I'm just going to show and kind of stab at the ball and then retreat. So they'll do probably one of those two things. So it's all going to come down to whether it's Conwell, whether it's McKnight. If they do decide to go drop coverage, I just think that's Conwell has a propensity to just kind of torture you there, not only just in the mid range, but pull up threes off the bounce. But then if you do stab and you go and show at the ball, your backside help's got to be really good because Fremantle is a threat when he's rolling to the rim. So I think you probably have to maybe mix coverages up or assign it to different personnel. Hey, we want to do this on McKnight. Hey, we want to do this on Conwell. But when they're not right defensively, it all stems from their ball screen defense. So if Xavier is going to be successful, it's going to be playing in ball screens, dribble handoffs, and really putting pressure on I'd say like the triangle of guys. So the guy up top, the guy guarding the ball screen, the guy setting the screen, and then the guy in the tag spot guarding the roller who's coming in from the weak side.
In the Big Ten tournament this year, Illinois beats Iowa 106-94, and then the next day puts up 65 and loses by 23 to Maryland. Yeah. Does that sequence summarize Illinois' season, or is that not? Did things just go wrong in the Big Ten tournament?
It summarizes it in a way. I think the Dukes and the Marylands of the world, when you look at real versatility in the front court, and I think Fremantle's a good player, but by and large, I mean, I know they throw a couple other guys in there, but it's really four guards / wings and Fremantle for a good part of that game. When you start getting like Reese and Queen, Flagg and Malawach, like that's where Illinois just really had no answers this year with that type of front court versatility. So the difference too was I thought in that Maryland game there were so many scouting report errors, busting switches, closing out short to shooters. I mean, you cannot do that against this Xavier team. Like you want to talk about closing out short. If you close out short on Dante Maddox, if you close out short on Ryan Conwell and they see their first couple threes go in, I mean, Paul, it's game on. I mean, and then those guys can shoot it off platform and off balance, and you're kind of at their mercy. So the first 5-10 minutes of this game, being assignment sound and understanding your personnel, not going under on those guys, having to go over, force tough shots. That's got to be the plan for Illinois. Because again, this Xavier team is so tough, and if you get them brimming with confidence early, they stay focused. So it's going to be tough to kind of pull them out of that.
All right, last couple questions for you here, Mike. Do you feel like looking at how you mentioned, coming off that high of a win, right, with all of the emotion that goes into beating Texas. And I've talked at length for people that are listening to this show consistently throughout the week. I have talked a lot about how Sean Miller was on the wrong end of this exact situation when Arizona got smacked by Wichita State in Providence, however many years ago now that was. I would love to know the messaging from the Xavier coaching staff with Sean as the head coach, knowing exactly what this is like for Illinois on the 2 days of preparation when they didn't know who they were going to play. Now, obviously, you have the scouting reports, that you're playing one of the two, but it's not exactly the same as all of these other teams that are playing on Friday that know exactly who they're playing for 4 days. it's a little different because now you have those 2 days in between where you can actually nail it down on Xavier's coverage. How do you feel like this Illinois coaching staff maybe handles the turnaround, and from the other perspective, as a former player yourself, when you're going through these quick turnarounds, trying to match up, trying to find these coverages, trying to go through the scouting reports, what's this quick turnaround like?
So I do think earlier in the week, the Illinois staff is preparing for both Xavier and Texas, and they're formulating a whole comprehensive scouting report so that the second that buzzer sounds, you send them out, you get it to your team, iPads, whatever they got. So I think that was probably the plan earlier in the week. But as soon as you find out your opponent, to me as a staff, and I think I would assume Xavier is doing the same thing, is less is more. You want to really focus on yourself, probably more than the opponent. Make sure you got your house in order. And then the things that you need to know about your opponent on a one-day prep is, hey, understanding personnel. Who are the guys we want to take away airspace from? Who do we got? Who are guys we want to help off of? Understanding the personnel, and then saying, okay, what are maybe some quick hitters for them? What are some of their go-to actions? What should we be aware of defensively? And then, on the other side of it for Sean Miller and Xavier, I think it's the same. I think it's just, hey, we understand, what makes us go. We need to do those things. And I think for Illinois specifically, you don't want to inundate a young team. You talked about inexperience in the tournament. There's a lot of guys playing in their first NCAA tournament for Illinois as well. I mean, Kylan Boswell's played in it. Trey White's played in it. But by and large, Will Riley, Yakushonis, and Ivicic, like those guys have played high level overseas, but this is a kind of a different ball game when you come into this tournament. So you don't want to inundate your team with information, and then have them get out in the court and start thinking. That's when you start thinking, then you're slow to react, and that's a recipe for disaster in a single elimination tournament. So that goes for both teams on a one-day prep. So I think both teams keep it simple and probably focus more on what they need to accomplish, understand the personnel, and then go out there and just kind of let it rip and play free of mind.
Last question for you, Mike. What do you think the crowd's like?
I think it's going to be a damn good crowd because I think you're going to have Kentucky fans in there. You're going to have Illinois fans. We saw how Xavier traveled last night, and it's probably going to be even more so. I know. I used to live in Dayton, so I know how close that is. So I know it's a little bit further from Milwaukee, but there's probably Xavier alums in Chicago, and people that are going to make.
But Illinois being right there as well, Champaign.
Illinois, yeah. I mean, Illinois, that goes without saying. I mean, it's going to be a very, I don't want to say very pro Illinois crowd, but there's going to be a lot of Illini fans.
No doubt.
There. It's a short drive. I mean, it's shorter than even Indy for the Big Ten tournament. So I know people have probably been saving up to make sure they get out to this, and the fact that it's this close. I mean, their previous few years, they were Des Moines one year. I'm trying to remember. I mean, they went out to Boston for the Elite Eight last year, so they've been somewhat far away. The big 2005 game when that Illini team made the comeback with Darren Williams and D Brown, that was right there in Chicago. So that was they haven't really had one that close, I don't think, since. So I think it'll be a damn good turnout. I think it's going to be a really, really awesome crowd.
Mike, I appreciate you taking a few minutes today. You do great work on the Field of 68. Always love listening to you. But where else can people find your stuff? I've mentioned your Illinois coverage as well.
If you're super interested in the Illinois coverage, yeah, Illini Inquirer. There's a bunch of stuff on YouTube. If you just, I guess, search my name in Illini Inquirer, there's some film rooms if you want to really dig into Illinois and what they're doing. But yeah, at LaTulip_Mike on Twitter. You mentioned the Field of 68 stuff. That's pretty much all I got. But I will say, man, that intro to start this live, that was sick.
I appreciate that. That was the first time I've run it. That's high level stuff.
That was high level, dude. Yeah, that was awesome, man.
Stamp of approval.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Got it.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Talk soon.
All right, man. Appreciate it.